So today we will start reading our Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, continuing on that. And we are on verse 2 of Canto 1, Chapter 1. धर्मः प्रोज्झितकैटवोऽत्र परमो निर्मत्सराणां सतां वेद्यं वास्तवमत्र वस्तु शिवदं तापत्रयोन्मूलनम् श्रीमद्भागवते महामुनिकृते किं वा परैरीश्वरः सद्यो हृद्यवरुध्यते अत्र कृतिभिः शुश्रुभिः तत्क्षणात् completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated, this Bhagavad Puran propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasdev in his maturity, is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. So, few things what this verse is telling us, that Bhagavatam is completely transcendental. It is not like certain things in Vedas, do this, then you will get this, or something like that. It is completely transcendental. It is about the highest truth. And second, that highest truth is understandable by devotees who are pure in heart. Then that highest truth will uproot the threefold miseries, right? There are three kinds of miseries. We have discussed that. And then this Bhagavatam was compiled by great sage Vyasdev in his maturity of realization. So this Bhagavad Puran is sufficient for God realization, and there is no need of any other scripture. And what is the last thing? That what should be the hearer's attitude. So these are all the things that are given to us by Bhagavatam. What we have to offer to Bhagavatam, that we need to attentively and submissively hear the messages. Okay. If we will continue like that, then by culture of that knowledge, Supreme Lord will be established in the heart. So we had started reading about, what are the materially motivated activities, and we had discussed dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. All these are fall under that category, right? Also, Prabhupada discussed what is the difference between humans and animals is only the factor of religion, because humans follow the religion and animals don't have any such things. Otherwise, humans and animals are almost doing the same four things: eating, sleeping, defending, and producing. But only humans are doing in more sophisticated ways. They have better arrangements for eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, right? So, but religion is one thing that's distinguishes them from the animals. So also Prabhupada discussed about how there is always a competition to become a controller, okay, to lord it over the material nature, whether they are people or these are things or circumstances. Everything we want to control. Means what? If something goes which is not of our liking, then we get upset about it, and that is a big indication that we want to control. So even for ourselves, sometimes we think that how bad I am, I do this, I do that, and I'm not good for anything. So too much thinking about ourselves is also falls under controlling category, right? Because if we are, just being ourselves and trying to improve little by little, then we will have satisfaction of heart, and everything we do in service to Krishna. That kind of consciousness switch we need to make. Okay. So our previous life and then the life since we started our devotional service of chanting the holy name, this switch should happen. That whatever we do, even it is improving ourselves, like cultivating good qualities, everything we should do keeping in mind that this is we are doing in service to Krishna. Also, it was discussed that how the temples and mosques are now vacant. Why? Because once people get all these facilities, dharma, artha, kama, then they don't feel a need to go to the religious places, because mostly people are asking for some or the other things, and then they lose interest when they get the thing, right? Or some people keep asking, so they keep worshipping also. That is also there. uh, so in the Vedas, the above mentioned four activities are prescribed in a regulative way. Means what? This dharma, artha, kama, moksha. So that there will not be any undue competition for sense gratification. But Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to all these sense gratificatory activities. It is purely transcendental literature which can be understood only by pure devotees of Lord who are transcendental to competitive sense gratification, right? So those devotees who have gone beyond this kind of envy and all this kind of competitive spirit. In the material world, there is a keen competition between animal and animal, man and man, community and community, nation and nation. But the devotees of Lord rise above such competitions. They do not compete with materialists because they are on the path back to Godhead, where life is eternal and blissful. They know it, right? They have that kind of knowledge, and they are looking for now that realization that we want to go back to Godhead, where life is eternal and blissful. Otherwise, this in this material world, this competition is not going to end ever. This is like a, forest fire which only increases unless the rain shower comes. Otherwise, any human arrangement cannot stop the wildfire. It is very, very difficult, very difficult, right? So guru's mercy is compared to that rain shower which stops this forest fire which is burning in our heart, like competition and envy and progress, all those things. And that same fire we are giving to our children as well. Such transcendentalists are non-envious and pure in heart, who are beyond this competitive spirit. In the material world, everyone is envious of everyone else, and therefore there is a competition. But the transcendental devotees of the Lord are not only free from material envy, but are well-wishers to everyone, and they strive to establish a competition-less society with God in the center, right? So Krishna is in the center, everyone is serving. Somebody is very good at cooking, somebody sings very well, somebody doesn't know many things, so he is cleaning the parts. But everything is important in Krishna's family, right? Like in our own household, we can see if we don't wash the pots for 2 days, they will start stinking, right? So that is also very, very important thing to do. And also, wiping the dust and sweeping the floor and mopping, everything is equally important, as much as singing and presentations are important, right? So Krishna is in the center and everyone is working according to their capacity and everyone is happy. So that's how the Vedic time was. People really were happy, very satisfied, and there was no envy, no competition, no unnecessary wars, and no enragement of any kind of and no killing of people, killing of unnecessary killing of animals. Nothing was there. Everyone was very satisfied and happy in their own varna and ashrama, and just their service to the Supreme Lord. The contemporary socialist conception of competition-less society is artificial, because in the socialist state, there is competition for post of dictator, right? Like we are seeing currently, the communist countries. From the point of view of the Vedas, or from the point of view of common human activities, sense gratification is the basis of material life. So since we have already come here in this material life, definitely there was a big ambition for sense gratification, or there was a lot of envy in our heart. That's how we are still here in the material world. There are three paths mentioned in the Vedas. One involves fruitive activities to gain promotion to better planets, means just karmi. Okay, just do karma, 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 and get promotion to better planets. Don't harm anyone. Don't say bad things. Just do your work. Another involves worshipping different demigods for promotion to the planets of demigods. So they do work as well as they worship the demigods because they have ambition to go to the planets of different demigods. And another involves realizing the absolute truth and his impersonal feature and becoming one with him. So what is that? That is just yogic meditation and just performing some asanas, pranayamas, and then becoming one with the Supreme Lord by thinking. I mean, it's nobody can become one with the Supreme Lord, but they are thinking that we will like what you say, merge into the Brahma Jyoti. That is only they can become one with the his effulgence only. The impersonal aspect of the absolute truth is not the highest. Above the impersonal feature is the Paramatma feature, like the Lord which can be seen in our heart. And above this is the personal feature of absolute truth or Bhagwan that we have discussed a few times, right? Bhagwan can be realized in three features. One is impersonal Brahman, which is the effulgence of Krishna, which is coming from his body. Second is Paramatma feature, where one can see Krishna's form in his heart while meditating. And third is the actual Bhagwan feature, which is the physical form of Krishna, comes before us. Actually, physical saying will be wrong because Krishna has a spiritual body. So you can see the spiritual form of Krishna before you. And there are many stories related to that. Many devotees have seen the form of Krishna, like Dhruva Maharaj. So Prishni Garbha Vishnu came before him and he gave him benediction. Prahlad Maharaj, Narsimhadev came before him and he gave him benediction. So likewise, many, even like in very close to the history, in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's time, which is like 500 and plus 10, 15 years ago, 515 years ago, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was Krishna, right? So he showed his Shadbhuj form to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, one of the devotees. And what was the Shadbhuj form? So two bhujas or two arms carried this what you call bow and arrow. Then two arms were carrying flute. Two arms were carrying one flute, and two arms were carrying in the one sannyasi, danda of a sannyasi and kamandalu. So one was Lord Ram, one was Krishna, and another was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was a sannyasi, right? So he showed that form. So his personal feature he shows to the pure devotees. It is higher than impersonalist literatures and higher than Gyan Kanda division of Vedas. It is even higher than Karma Kanda division and even higher than the Upasana Kanda division because it recommends the worship of Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. So that is the highest, okay, from Jnana Kanda, Upasana Kanda, Karma Kanda, all those. In the Karma Kanda, there is competition to reach heavenly planets for better sense gratification, means do home, havan, yagna, and ask for different things. And there is similar competition in Jnana Kanda and Upasana Kanda. The Srimad Bhagavatam is superior to all of these because it aims at the supreme truth, which is the substance or root of all categories. Means everything comes from Krishna only. Like in Bhagavad Gita, if you will see, Krishna has discussed all kinds of philosophies, okay? But he has kept himself, bhakti, to be the topmost, right? So he says, yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yomam sa me yuktatamo matah. So he says, this is my opinion, mera mat hai ye, that bhakti is the highest. Yoginam api sarvesham, from all the yogis, one who keeps me in his heart, always remembers me and worships me from his heart. Okay, so that is the devotee only. So he has said bhakti is the highest. Okay, but he has discussed everything. You might know that Ashtanga Yoga is also discussed in Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga is discussed, Jnana Yoga is discussed, right? But not Karma Kanda or Upasana Kanda. So what is the difference between Karma Kanda and Karma Yoga? That Karma Kanda is there is no God in the picture. Only me. What do I want? Okay, I am doing this, but I want something. That's why. So it is not for the that particular deity. Okay. but still it is good because we are following some authority from the scripture. Okay, so it is still okay. But karma yoga is what? When Krishna is in the picture, right? So when we are trying to link with the God through our prescribed duties, so then it becomes yoga. When there is a linking process, okay, yoga is not only, it's not exercises. Yoga means summation in math, right? And yoga means linking with the supreme. Okay, so that is very, very important distinction. So Srimad Bhagavatam is superior to all this because it aims at the supreme truth, which is the substance or root of all categories. So I was discussing that from Krishna everything comes, but it depends on us that what we want to choose. And Krishna has declared what is the best. From Srimad Bhagavatam, one can come to know the substance. So substance is Krishna, and all these are categories as well as categories. The substance is the absolute truth, the Supreme Lord, and all emanations are relative forms of energy. So little bit is left that we will cover next Thursday. I think we will finish this one verse. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
So my question is, why is Krishna called the absolute truth?
So what does absolute means? What does absolute mean? Absolute means which never changes, which never deteriorates, which is always the same, right? So, and what is relative? Which changes, right? So for example, right now I'll say it's 5:29 p.m. This is the truth right now. But within a second or within a minute, this will not remain the truth. This will not be a truth ever, because 3rd March 2022 5:29 will never come back, because that will not, because that is temporary. Okay, so absolute means which is not temporary, which is eternal, and which never changes, which is always the same. So therefore Krishna is that kind of truth which never changes, which is not dependent on any other truth, which is not like deteriorated by any circumstances. It is always perfect and it always remains the same. So therefore Krishna is called as the absolute truth.
Thank you.
It made sense to you?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else?